Hello, everyone. I'm Captain Logan, and joining me right now is Wendell Jones, who is our composer for Superhero Rewind, the movie. And I wanted to talk to Wendell for a while about the process of scoring this beast. And Wendell has been with me as long as anybody on this project. He's actually been working on this thing almost as long as Jason and I have. He goes like besides the writing part of it, of course, and it's just kind of crazy to think, Wendell, how long we've been dealing with this, and how you and I have like never gotten together on camera and talked like this. It goes all the way back to do you remember this? I think
No,
you
jog my memory.
okay. So the table read was November of 23, and I think you had the Doomsvent suite, or whatever we were calling that, written even a couple of months before that. Maybe was that over the summer? Maybe.
I think so. I think so. Yeah. Yeah. What I do remember is that you had this theme in mind for Doomsmans, and you sent it me, and it was pretty fleshed out. Yeah. Like it was, a full melodic phrase. And then you said, do something with that. And I did. That was the start. So yeah. Yeah, but that was very, very cool theme, very, very like hummable and malleable, and I figured at that point that I could take that theme and have a lot of fun with that through the score. So yeah, it ended up being really, really potent. So yeah, we have you to thank for that. Yeah, it was amazing.
Well, we have
So
you to thank for it, like sounding good and being like it ended up being a really malleable melody, but it's just nuts all the different things you managed to do with it. Like you took it as the minor Doomsvents theme, and am I right that you kind of just made it major and then turned that into the Captain Logan theme?
yeah, yeah, that's that. I mean, a very kind of simple idea for a composer, but it just worked really well. I just put some new chords, new harmony under it, and it worked really well for that. So it ended up being not just the Doomsvins theme or the Captain Logan theme. It became a theme kind of for the movie.
Yeah.
It became its own own character in a way. But
Well, we kept referring
uh,
to it together as the Overworld theme because we were thinking
yeah,
about it like a Mario game, like Koji Kondo, where you take that one kind of thematic idea, and he would rephrase it in all these different levels. And when you're a kid and you're playing something like Mario World or Mario 64, you don't even realize it's the same theme every time. And then you get a little older and you go, oh wait, it's the same thing. He just keeps modulating it and slowing it down, speeding it up, and changing things around. So we kind of ended up with that with this. But then there's also another theme that wends through this that Jason came up with, that he sent you, that he was shocked when it finally shows up in the movie, when you sent us part 3 or 4 of the score, or whatever it was in our terms. When you were sending me like half an hour chunks, and that was the, I actually played in with it, but that was the dun 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 dun, and he didn't. I think he sent you that just thinking it was like a cool theme, wanted your opinion on it. I don't think he expected it to show up in the movie, and he certainly didn't expect it to become the reviewer theme.
yeah, that was really cool. Yeah, he came up with a really, really cool idea on a little piano sketch. He sent me, asked me what I thought of it, and then I added some orchestra to it, beefed it up, and yeah, it just worked really well in that moment because when we see the reviewer, it's a new character, so it's important to get a new sound, a new vibe for that scene. And yeah, it just worked. It worked really, really well, and I tried to place it where I thought it was appropriate. It even appears towards the end of the movie when the reviewer has Doomsvins at gunpoint. So yeah, I just tried to find pivotal moments where where that could work. But yeah, that was also very very malleable as well. Yeah.
So this process was so much fun for me because Wendell wrote the movie more or less linearly, with the exception of the climax because I didn't have that edited entirely because there was so many moving parts before I sent Wendell the last half hour, 45 minutes. So I got to keep like waiting around for the next section and get to drop it in time with the movie, which was so much fun. And Wendell would turn me in, like I said, half an hour at a time. And the man is really fast, and it was just it was shocking the quality. I'm gonna kind of toot your horn for a second. It was shocking the quality of this. I and as quickly as you were able to get it to me, just and like I want to say making deadlines. We didn't even really have deadlines. It was kind of just like get it to me when you can, and here's about when we're hoping to put the movie out. And Wendell was done 3 months before I said we were probably going to do the premiere. As of this recording, by the way, we haven't had the premiere yet. So the stage we're at the moment is the movie is basically done, and Jason and I are just working on some audio cleanup right now. And Wendell, I'll also tell you, we're we're still kicking around length. We're still trying to decide if we're going to cut anything out of it, uh, because it's really long, and like it doesn't watch long to me. I don't know how everybody else is going to feel about it, but we're going to do this local premiere, and we're going to ask people to sit for almost 3 hours through this really self-indulgent movie, I think. So anyway, I'm still really, really nervous about the length of it. And I guess that's the thing I wanted to ask you about is just, like, we haven't talked about this privately, but like, what, how do you feel about that? What's your concern about just how long the thing ended up being? And was there any part of you while you were scoring that's like, God, this is long. Like, because you never sent me a message. You're like, are we really going this long? Like, you just scored it. Of course, there's not music through the entire movie, but I mean, there's an extra 30, 40 minutes more of score that I would have expected when we started this thing. It just ended up really long.
Yeah, no, it was such a blast to work on everything. I was just, yeah, happy to have the chance to write more music for it. Yeah, at least for me, selfishly as a composer, it's nice to have something so long because I had a lot of different themes for different characters, and it gave me a chance to develop them, a lot through the movie. So I think certainly for the first act, it's a little more sparse. There's a little more space between the cues, but then as we go on and the action gets heavier, particularly when Doomsvince is in the bunker, and he's fighting the two caps. It's wall to wall music there. Yeah, I think one of the cues I sent you was almost 15 minutes long. So I'm guilty for going too far in length too,
No,
but
but I was so excited. It was such an embarrassment of riches, dude. Like, that's exactly what I was hoping for. And we should probably say, just backtrack for a minute, I gave you almost no mandates with this, right? Like, I pretty much
no.
just let you go.
You did, yeah. I'm very, very grateful for that. I mean, all you said was go nuts, and I did. So yeah, like, both musically, mentally. So yeah, no, it was really, really, it was really a lot of fun. So yeah, I mean, this is something that I enjoy. It's I'm not ever going to complain about having to write more music. Yeah, there were some strange choices you made. I remember you really thought that bagpipes would be an integral part of this score. And so, I mean, Dooms Vince is half Scottish, so you sent me to that bagpipe training academy for a year, but then after a month, I was kind of, starting to develop really heavy hearing damage, and so yeah, we decided to take a different approach.
But I
And then we,
appreciated the fact that you still referenced Wrath of Khan, even if that wasn't going to be the part of Wrath of Khan that you referenced.
right,
So,
right, right. And well, there were moments with some characters where I knew their musical tastes and their musical interests. So obviously, I know that Brandon's a a Star Trek fan. And I don't know how he feels specifically about Spock, but when he uh, it. I thought I would give him the Spock death treatment. Yeah, and I tried to get in some violin for some of his music just because I know he's a very proficient violinist too. And same with Doomsvince. I know he really loves the Blues Brothers, so I thought that some jazz would be an obvious choice for him. I tried to get some finger snaps and double bass, some classic jazz instruments, because his scenes are cheeky for the most part. Yeah, there are some intense moments, but there's a lot of comedy, especially in those early scenes. So, yeah,
Uh, it's just crazy how lucky I am to have you on this project, Wendell, and I could not be more grateful for your willingness to be involved and to do as much work on it as you did. Um, so let's for a second talk about like how we met and how we even got together. Because I was gonna say one of the reasons I feel really lucky with this, besides the fact that just you know what you're doing and you're really talented, is nobody on a project like this could get into my head like you did. Like this is what it would sound like if I knew how to score. I like you know my sensibilities and you know my writing and you know how I like to operate. Like I said, it admittedly very self-indulgent piece. It's done that way on purpose, and you made it more that way and I feel like how much you got it into my head. So let's talk a little bit about like how we even met and how I got lucky enough to be able to get you involved in this thing.
sure, sure, yeah, yeah. Well, I can't remember exactly when we met, but I had watched the channel for a long time. I kind of initially got into it because of watching Trexperts videos. And that's how I found the channel. And then years later, you were inviting people to your writing workshop. And so I emailed you with a terrible first chapter, and you very kindly accepted me in. And
It was not a
when I
terrible
was
first chapter, but anyway,
thank you for
Wendell is
that.
is an amazing writer in his own right, and we have workshopped an entire novel for Wendell. He wrote this really great science fiction piece that he's talking about making a series, and I'm hoping to read more of it. But anyway,
Yeah, no, so that's how it began, and yeah, and it was, and I think it was through some of the comments you made on my story that I recognized we had some similar sensibilities with that too, which I think is what kept me watching the channel as well. But I think this whole project, the kind of nostalgia for the 90s, especially. For me is very true too. Yeah. I think that you talked about this being a project of catharsis, and I think it was for me. In writing, especially when you have scenes that are set in the 90s. Well, what better music to write for that than some things that happened in the 90s? So, not to get like too technical about that, but there are certain musical scales that were used back then, a scale called Lydian scale, and you use that scale and it just takes you back to that, like family movie, family comedies from the 90s. And so when I read the script that you gave the workshop, I kind of thrust myself at you. Maybe I should rephrase that, but yeah, I thought this is perfect. So I kind of forced my services onto Cap. And yeah, ever since the arrest, I've tried to stop forcing myself on people, but old habits die hard. So
so I was
yeah,
working
but
with real quick. Sorry, I was working with Wendell in the workshop for months, if not a year or two, before I even realized that he composed music. And the way I learned about this is Wendell's working on his book, and at one point he writes this track that he puts in our Discord for the workshop, and says, "What do you think about this as a theme for a certain character or for the piece itself?" I can't remember. And I play the piece, and it's this quirky sci-fi thing. It's got theremin, and it sounds honestly like some of the stuff that's in the movie, but it was just incredibly well produced, and the production on it was amazing. And I was like, I don't know what program he's using. I don't know like where the man like got this talent and how long he's been writing music, but like it never came up. Like we'd been working with you in the workshop forever, and I had no idea you like maybe we knew that you wrote music, but I didn't know that you knew how to score like that. And then I find out that Wendell's got an IMDb, and I go and look, and he's scored Star Trek fan films that I've seen. And I was like, what? Like, I thought I knew this guy. He had this whole other alternate, persona I didn't know about. He was like moonlighting as a composer.
Yeah, it's so true. Yeah, I think that's my superhero name, the Ivory Tinkler. I always wanted that name. Yeah, no. I mean, in my life, I think you'll find me between a piano, a manuscript, and a bar. So yeah, if you ever want to find me, go to those three places, and you'll see me. But yeah, no, and I think that it's also a product of age. I'm a similar age to Cap, and
Yeah,
when you've lived, you've done a lot of things, and yeah, when you introduce yourself to people, you don't say, "Hey, I do this and I do this and I do this." So,
that's true.
or I try not to do that. It's because you never want to appear arrogant. I forever fear the question, how many instruments do you play? What I would prefer to get asked is, how long have you lived? Because then if I start listing off instruments, it just makes me sound really pretentious. But yeah, I play a few instruments, and I've been writing for a long time. I've really enjoyed composing two pictures specifically for a long time as well. And yeah, and when I really want to challenge myself, I play the square, yeah, which is like the triangle, but it has a whole extra side to that.
But not the
Yeah,
bagpipes.
no, and not the pentagon either. I tried the pentagon, but they didn't answer. Terrible joke, and I'm going to stop. But yeah, no, I think that. For something else that really made me want to do this score is that I have a soundtrack podcast, and on that podcast in particular, me and my co-host talk a lot about 90s scores. So we have a lot of nostalgia there. We are studying, a 90s score almost every week. So yeah, to see so much of this movie take place back then also made me really want to go back and do it, because I have a nostalgia for soundtracks in the 90s as well. The film scoring world has changed as much as the film world has, and not everything for the better, depending who you speak to. But yeah, there's so much in this movie because of the length that it gives us chance not just to craft some really cool 90s nostalgia, but there's moments of horror. There are moments of adventure and whimsy. We were talking earlier about the Doomsvins theme. Like, because of some of the earlier comedic moments, I was able to use the theme on like a Calliope, a big barrel organ at one point. That was really fun, because Vince, as a floating head, or Doomsvince, I should say, as a floating head, it just struck me as like old school sci-fi Hammer House of Horror kind of thing. I thought, well, let's use a theremin-like instrument for that. That will be perfect. And Doomsvince is so dramatic with his dialogue that it just meant that I could go to town on it. So yeah, there's so many opportunities to do so many cool uh, things. And yeah, I hope everyone who listens enjoys it as much as I did and you did making it. Yeah, we had a blast. We really did. It was a lot of fun.
Well, and you really elevated the material because it is, and I don't mean to be self-deprecating when I say this, but like I know going into this project how much of an amateur I am. Like I'm not really a filmmaker. I'm doing the best I can with what little I have, right? So this was a crowd-funded project. Everybody's working pro bono. That's another reason I'm saying how like lucky and fortunate I am to have you working on this project, but also like everybody else that was willing to uh, donate their time and spaces and like places that we went and shot on location and stuff. Everybody's doing this for fun, and everybody's doing this to just make a cool thing come together. So this project literally cost $1,200 and nobody got paid. Like that's the project. And so with Wendell, I won the lottery because I got the most qualified possible person to score this. Not only because he knows what he's doing, but also he knows me so well, and willing to do this just for fun out of the kindness of his own heart. Like I can't tell him how much I appreciate that, of course. And so just I wanted to go on the record and say again, I can't tell you how much I appreciate that because I'm a total amateur. I have no idea what I'm doing. I try to make the shots look as cool as I can, but there's equipment that we wish we had that we just don't, and you just do the best you can with what you've got. So at least the soundtrack sounds professional, and but I think there's a really neat juxtaposition that happens with it, where it's this clearly small amateur project where half the movie takes place in my house. We contrive a reason to not take everything out of my basement at the end. It's a clearly lazy choice that I hope comes off real clever and fun, because originally that was the plan, Wendell, is we were going to take everything out of my basement, and I went, that isn't practical. I don't know where it's all going to go. And then Jason and I started talking about possible ways to mask it and shoot around things, and just how would we even accomplish it. And finally we landed on, what if everything was a hologram and we just left it, and could we make that a cool story point? And I think ultimately it really works, especially because it gives you more cool stuff to look at. That is a half an hour scene. Imagine if the basement was empty. It's actually better that way, it turns out. But anyway, just the juxtaposition of, it's clearly an amateur project with not a lot of money behind it, but it sounds epic.
Yeah, no, and thank you for saying that. But yeah, no, I think the honor is mine. This is definitely a passion project for me. Yeah, it was a pleasure, and we really wanted to record at Abbey Road Studios, in London, with a symphony orchestra of 100 musicians. But after hearing them play, we decided we didn't think they would be talented enough to it written, right? So we we decided to make it in my basement instead. Yeah, it's a tale of two basements. But
Do you even have a
yeah,
basement? Do they have basements in Mexico?
no, 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 no.
I was gonna say I didn't think they did.
It very much is a basement.
Oh,
A single light bulb, cobwebs, a strange body in the corner.
I see.
It's
Okay, so you don't have a basement. The place is a basement.
a basement. Yeah,
I see.
very much
I
so.
don't know. I'd live in a place like that. I love my basement. I'd live in just a basement.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, it worked out for the school, but yeah, I mean, a lot of that is also a product since the 90s of digital virtual instruments just getting better and sounding really professional. I mean, the
Yeah.
instruments that are used now are recorded by very, very professional orchestras in really professional sound stages. So yeah, my music sounds good because of those people who made the instruments sound good. I have to say that, but yeah, I think it's really important to take it really seriously, and in some ways, because it's a little underground. being a little more bombastic and a little more dramatic with the music, I think lends itself to that quality. It's the fun of doing this kind of project. If I was writing for TV right now, there would be a lot of drones in my music, and I would be very, very bored. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why I jumped at this opportunity. Yeah, but yeah, there were moments when there was a lot of music needed, and I tried to get out of it, but Cap tied me to the piano. He force fed me Pop Tarts and Mountain Dew until I came up with something. Yeah, but it's okay. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, well, talking about how over the top it sounds like what I'm always talking about with writing. Honestly, is you can break the rules, but it's got to be clear that you know you're breaking them, and there's got to be a good reason for doing that. And so the score you wrote, there's a lot of things you do in that wouldn't be right for. A lot of other projects, and we're breaking convention all over the place. And I think the thing that's most impressive about it to me is I wasn't sure all the references would work. And I know you were concerned about that too, where we have a crazy number, and I hear new ones every time I listen to it, and I'm curious to see how much people watching the movie pick up on it. But just all over the place. I don't even know what the number is. It's probably 60, 70, 80. But there are tons of references to obviously superhero movie score and science fiction scores, and like Virtual Fighters in there, and the song that Tim Lyons wrote for Spawn Year is in there. Like there's even references to my stuff. This one I was shocked by, and nobody that I've shown the movie to so far I guess knows the channel well enough to have picked up on it. But you even got the piano melody from the old Geekvolution intros in there a couple times. I was blown away when that showed up. But I was a little concerned that it would be hard for the score to have its own sound if we did that, and that it would get like too distracting, and it would just feel like the memberberry thing I'm always complaining about with a lot of like decades later sequels and reboots and things that are just all about fan service before they're anything else. And it's a movie about superhero movies and about fandom and when it goes bad and all of that. So there's a parody element where I want to think that we're getting away with doing all the stuff that I keep complaining about other things doing, just because that's part of the point of it, right? Is that we are giving these other movies crap by doing the same thing in ours. But I think that ultimately really worked out, and I don't know how exactly you managed it. I feel like the score has enough of its own sound while you're constantly getting John Williams Superman in there and Danny Elfman Batman, and et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, yeah, no, and I think, I mean, that's just absolute fun, and those melodies, those great melodies that all these amazing composers wrote are constantly going around my head anyway. So they're gonna come out at my fingertips one way or another. So yeah, but there are obviously this is not a sequel or a franchise, but because the Geek Evolution channel has been going on for so long. Not to date you, Cap, or not to age you, but there's such like a wealth of material to draw from. But also that there are moments, and I don't know if this is just how on the nose or deliberate this is by you, but that there were moments that reminded me of scenes from superhero movies. I mean, for example, when you have Doomsvins in a bag and you're sitting there waiting to stop. I was thinking in that moment, like, oh, he's really lonely here, yeah. And so it made me think of that wonderful bittersweet theme from the Incredible Hulk.
Yeah, I had the Lonely Man theme in my head while doing that walk in that scene, and I didn't ask you to put it in there. I kind of just expected it would show up, to be honest with you. Like I don't know if I would have asked for it. We were so on the same wavelength. I didn't even think to tell you stuff, and it would just show up there.
Yeah, yeah. It's fun to hear. I mean, there are, um, a lot of obscure references, and I don't want to like name them all. I think part of the fun for people who are interested, is going in and finding those
Yeah, I wanted to be
connections.
careful with that too, but I wanted to mention a few just in case people didn't even realize how much of that we were doing. Because that's the thing I'm
Yeah,
finding with the few people I've shown it to so far is some people just don't even notice it, like at all. And it's like,
yeah.
I, I, I pick up a controller and I'm playing Superman 64 and you're not hearing John Williams right now? Like, all right.
Yeah, yeah, no, it's quite fun, and I mean, that's really what a score should be. I'm only here to service the movie as is everyone else working on the movie.
Yeah.
As bombastic as the music can be sometimes, I really hope that people don't notice it, but I hope that music just bleeds into their subconscious, and that there's some familiarity, so it has its time and its place, but. Yeah, like I wrote so much music for this that I don't remember all the references either. So I'm I'm right there with you and everyone, and like, oh yeah, I guess that is that theme. So yeah, it was
Well,
a pleasure.
we will release it, and people will be able to listen to it on their own. And I'm sure people will pick up more stuff just hearing it in isolation. I think as a soundtrack, it's going to listen really great on its own. Wendell, you and I haven't talked about this. I'm going to assume you don't mind if I release it, but
Not at all.
I'd like people to get to listen to it on its own like that. Jason and I have even talked about cutting a small run of the cassette tapes with some of the score, because that feels like a fun novelty item. Being a '90s thing, not even put it on CD, just put it
Just on
on
cassette.
on tape. I just think
Yeah,
that'd be really
that's
fun.
amazing. No, I would definitely love that. Yeah, no, that's amazing, and it's for it to be released. Yeah, I hope people enjoy that too. I can't remember which video this was, but I remember Brandon talking one time about his I think it was his grandmother, and he said that his grandmother had said that music isn't a gift until you give it away. I really like that statement,
Yeah, I forgot
and
about that.
yeah, because I think for so many bedroom musicians, aren't who don't really care to post on social media, we have so much music on our computers, and it just sits there. So yeah, it's nice that a lot of the things that that are in the school can be heard by everyone. But yeah, I think for a lot of the uh, uh, a lot of the joy of writing this comes from all of those references. It's as much a love letter to Superhero Rewind and all the great things that you have done on the channel over the years, as it is a love channel to all of those movies and all of those scores and soundtracks. So yeah, and it's nice to have that opportunity to pay homage to all those people. And we should mention about the other musicians who worked on this too,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Yeah, the Jeff, as we must call him, your stepbrother. Yeah, he wrote a really nice piano version of Backyard Super Kid in the beginning, and I have to thank the Jeff for that, because when I was searching for different ideas for Captain Logan in the different uh, times that this movie takes place in, I couldn't really think of anything, and I went back and listened to that, and I thought, oh, maybe if I use an old, slightly out of tune uh, piano that sounds a bit bitter and curmudgeonly, like that would work well. And now the Jeff doesn't play piano like that. It's beautifully recorded on a really nice, very in tune piano. But that was just like a nice bit of inspiration, and also
Yeah.
Aaron Hickman, right? Did that fantastic chiptune version of the Backyard Super King 2,
And
and
specifically with
so
the Genesis sound chip, which I asked him to
yeah,
do,
yeah, that
and
that
he
is
just killed it.
amazing.
By the way, he's coming to the premiere.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah.
He's making he's making the trip. He got plane tickets, and so I'm really excited to see him. I've seen him in person a couple times. We go to a pinball convention together, but he's going to come here
Awesome.
to go to that and get. And he hasn't seen the movie at all yet, so he's going to get to see it with
Oh
everybody.
wow.
Yeah, it's going to be
Wow,
great.
that's awesome. Yeah, so yeah, he inspired me too. Even though I haven't talked to him, listening to that, like there is a scene in this movie where kid has a Game Boy and he's walking past you, and I thought, well, I write chiptune music too sometimes. Like let's use a bit of that too. So I did. I have it with me actually. Yeah, I have like some the Game Boy I use. I don't know how well you can see this.
That's great.
Yeah, I have this cartridge that I can put into this Game Boy that I can use to write music. It's LSDJ is the name of the software for anyone interested. And so
Oh, so you wrote it
yeah,
in the Game Boy?
I wrote it in the Game Boy
That's so
using this
cool, man.
chip.
I had no idea.
Yeah,
Show that again.
sure.
It's
Yeah,
so
yeah.
pretty. Look at that,
It is.
and it's purple, which makes it
Right.
better.
Yeah, I have a few of these, and I have the original Game Boy cable, so I can cheat. And I don't know how chiptune purists would feel about this, but I can cheat and connect two and get 8 channels of sound instead of four. Like whoa! I didn't do that for this. I stuck with one, but yeah, I the kind of overworld theme as we called it, and made a chiptune version of that. So that was quite fun, and I have a lot of uh, uh, bass and guitar pedals that I used in moments too. I wanted to give it some live instruments. So yeah, it wasn't all synthetic, but that's what I meant when I said earlier. It gave me so many opportunities to write so many things. So yeah, the honor is all mine. Yeah, I was kind of blessed to work on this. I can't think of anything else that I will ever write again that will be as fun as this project, unless you do another one. So I'm secretly hoping for that. But
Well, that makes me feel
yeah,
good.
it really
Just
was fun.
you really helped me realize the whole idea. Again, with how many, and it's not just that the references, but that it sounds good and they're appropriate place. And there's really, like neat, creative, clever ways that you even have some references wending in with other ones. And like you said, I don't want to give too much away, but there is one scene. Just listen for it, folks. When you're watching the movie, that's in the third act. I won't tell you exactly where he's got. I can't remember exactly what. I think it's like X2 and 89 and like something else. I can't remember, but there's three that are all there together at the same time, and it's really cool. By the way, you gave me quite a gift. I think one of my favorite bits uh, is during the firefight with the clones. When you go back to Danny Elfman and give us the score during the Axis Chemicals sequence just before Jack Napier becomes the Joker. I
Yes,
that's one of my
yeah,
favorite pieces of music, and it's one of my favorite bits in '89. And of course, you know how much I love that movie, and I wasn't expecting. And there was already a little bit of '89 here and there, just peppered in. That's the one place where it just kind of becomes that scene, and then, like you still get the overworld theme in it in places, and it's doing its. Oh, you know what? I'm sorry. Earlier, it wasn't '89. It was Returns. Anyway, but like that march comes in, and I was like, oh my god, is he going where I think he's going? And then it was that for that whole scene, and that made me happy. That was one of my favorite bits.
good. I'm so glad you enjoyed it. Yeah. Yeah, because I think the nicest thing that a composer can ever have a director do for them is say, go nuts as you did, and trust your instincts. And it's also equally the most terrifying thing someone can say, because even though you said this to me in parts, it was like, you know 30 minutes at a time, and you were very kind and pleasant and polite always with your feedback. But yeah, I think because our sensibilities are so similar on so many things, there was already a kind of shorthand there. I wasn't coming onto this project having not known you or spoken to you before, so that helped too. But yeah, a lot of those things are also because it's just in the dialogue. You mentioned pirates or you mentioned heroes. I'm like, well, why not get a little bit of that music in there? So yeah, it's not. Hopefully, it's not too shoehorned in, and let the audience
And that was
decide
the
that.
worry. I don't think it is. And I mean, it's definitely a risk you're taking, and some people might end up feeling that way about it. It ultimately
Sure,
really worked
sure.
for me, but it also complements the, like, again, admittedly self-indulgent nature of the piece in the first place. Like, there is, if I was making this as a more commercial project, obviously there are a lot of choices I made that I wouldn't have made. Like, we're talking about references. I spent a lot of time in the movie making up like silly names and ideas for horrible future superhero movies, and making fun of stuff that I've always complained about forever on Rewind, and it makes the movie longer and it risks bogging it down. But that's also what, like, our audience is probably there for, and it's a lot of the most fun stuff to write. One of the reasons that I'm glad that we decided to make this like a totally non-profit thing. Like, I'm not monetizing it at all. The only money I took was donations to buy props and get the thing made. I but I don't think we could have gotten away with the score you wrote if I was selling it. And the fact that we're not having to worry about copyright let me tell you, do whatever you want to. And honestly, I thought you would dance around themes. I wasn't even expecting specific themes, and the fact that we're not selling it made me go, I'm not going to tell them to change it. I think we can get away with it with what we're doing here. The good news is, when I've uploaded it unlisted, to show it to you and other people working on the project, none of that has actually gotten a copyright flag.
Oh, really?
You've done,
Well,
your melodies are subtle and short enough that, so far anyway, and maybe if it's there long enough, something will pick up. But so far, the algorithm has not grabbed it, or the bots or whatever has not grabbed any of that. There's one thing it keeps getting hit for copyright for, which is, and I wanted to bring this up too, which is the one song we decided to put in the movie, which is the Tom Lehrer song that opens the film. And the reason I did that, by the way, he just passed yesterday or the day before, and the movie is going to end up accidentally being kind of a Tom Lehrer tribute a month after he died, which makes me very happy. I've always been a big Tom Lehrer fan, and the reason that I got that song in there, I don't know if we've even talked about this, Wendell. The reason I chose that is I was on a trip and I was looking for ideas for this movie, and I found out that time, because I think at the time I didn't even realize we were going to have original music, and that I don't think I talked to you and I had a composer yet. So I thought I was going to have to score this like I did Spawn here, where I was just finding copyright free things that fit well enough, right? And so I'm looking for things that I can get away with using, and I found out that Tom Lehrer marked his entire catalog as public domain. And
oh,
he
wow.
said
Okay.
anybody can use it for any reason. And I went, okay, I'm using a Tom Lehrer song if I can find one that fits. And then I found Selling Out, and it thematically just seemed perfect to me. And it was like, it was kind of the right mood and the right vibe, and I liked the satire of it.
Yes.
And I was like, so before I even wrote the first draft, I had Selling Out in my mind, and I it's the only thing that's getting copyright flagged, and it's public domain. It shouldn't. I'm gonna dispute it, because whoever claims to own that doesn't. because Tom Lehrer made everything, open, like public domain, open to the public. But anyway,
Yeah.
that's the other piece of music that we need to that I felt like we needed to make sure and call out is I did use that song, and he just passed away. So
Wow.
it's a 93 years old. He made it, uh, and I just thought it was kind of wonderful that this is timed the way it is.
That's amazing. No, that's crazy. Yeah, I think that song is a really perfect choice. Yeah, I'm glad you chose that. It really sets up the tone of the film. You know, it's like this. This is very serious in many ways, at least for you. You know, but you know, there's so much fun in this as well. But yeah, no, it's awesome. There is this wonderful line. I mean, there are many wonderful lines of dialogue that you wrote in this, but one especially that really kind of encapsulated the whole experience for me was you said the last 20 years, all I've wanted is to live in the 90s again. And I think for anyone else who resonates with that phrase, they will get a huge kick out of watching this movie. They will love it. So I hope
I hope so.
we
Yeah.
did our best. Yeah,
Well, and
but
a couple people that I've told the premise to or that have actually seen it have asked me like, how much I actually feel like the older version of the character in the movie because like I've said it is a catharsis. Like, do you sometimes feel like doing the channel has been a waste and you should have spent your time doing something else? And I like not overall certainly, but I think like with anybody that spends a lot of their life doing one thing, I not that I haven't done other things, but I spend a lot of my time doing this. You get burnout sometimes, and you have periods where you go, "Well, God, this just isn't as good as it used to be." I've stalled out in buying new superhero movies for my collection because most of what's come out in the last couple of years not only were not very good, but like I hated them, and I don't want to spend $20 on the Crow remake and Venom: The Last Dance and crap like that. And so, and in fact, I actually built into the budget of the movie a few more recent ones that I was missing that I needed for props in the movie, and like I only have them right now because we made the movie. I forget what exactly. There were just the Flash was one. There were a few like when we started more recent movies that I didn't have yet that I referenced in the movie and that I felt like needed to be in that opening sequence. And anyway, so yeah, like with anything, there's a grain of truth, to some of it, but
yeah,
like not to the point where I'm gonna, ruin my life and would wish I was going back in time, or I expect my wife to leave me over it. It's not like that. But like you take a grain of truth and then you exaggerate it, and you play it out.
yeah, of course. And I think that's what leads us who are burnt out by consuming. It leads us to create more. You know, it's a wonderful thing as a creative. Yeah, you know that cheesy line of you be the change you want to see in the world. So, I think ultimately bad art comes full circle and leads to good art. I hope. But yeah, I think that it's also a product of age. I'm a couple of years younger than you, but I definitely feel the same way about not just superhero movies, but like the world at large at the moment. And I'm very fortunate and lucky that um, through work, business, personal endeavors. I don't need to be on social media. The times that I go on the internet is when I need to find something, and then I leave and and enjoy the rest of my life. So I know not everyone has that luxury, let's call it, in 2025, but yeah, I maybe don't feel as burnt out. I can certainly relate to it, and I hope that it's relatable to everyone. I think anyone who is quite young right now is hopefully watching this, and maybe they're not as burnt out by things because they're not old enough, but they could see how they could get to that point. And hopefully people who are older than us, 10, 15 years, are looking at this with a smile on their face thinking, I remember thinking that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, and so that you eventually, maybe in 10, 15 years, will start to feel optimistic again. But but yeah, it's like you said, it's drama. It has to be more dramatic and exaggerated, and I think you really succeeded with that. And I have watched this movie again and again and again, and I don't say that negatively. There's been moments of like blood, sweat, and tears, and breakable objects thrown across the room, but
That's
I
what you have to do
think
when you're working on something, and like I'm happy
yes.
with it. I'm proud of it, but I mean, I'm a little sick of it. Like I have to constantly look at it.
Yeah, well, I was gonna say that actually I'm not sick of it because it's so dense. There is so much in this that there is something for everyone to love in every moment, or at least I hope that's the takeaway. But if you absolutely hate the score, I want you to know that none of that is Cap's responsibility. It's all on me. You should send me a very angry letter. But yeah, no, it's really a pleasure, and I think that for many composers working today that I talk to, a lot of people feel the same way about some of the scores. The only advantage is that there are a lot of bad movies with great scores.
Yes,
So
that is true.
if you are bummed out by some bad movies, well, at least you can enjoy the score. I mean, many good scores I think help color what we remember from the movie. There's so many scores that I absolutely love, and I go back and watch the movie and think, what was I thinking? Yeah, this is not good. So, yeah, but no, I think there's a lot of a lot of good, like I said, that can come from so-called bad art. I think that, and this is my personal opinion, but to in talking about movies in general, sometimes I do think we can be too critical. I don't think we judge them um, the same way that we judge other things in my life. When I have a mug of steaming coffee, I don't need it to be better than the last one I had. Yeah, it just needs to be good enough. When I was searching for my wife, I mean, she is very much perfect in every way. When I say I shouldn't say searching, I wasn't searching for my wife. I found her very luckily, or she found me. But yeah, like when I'm looking at her, I'm not writing down the list of imperfections, or I would be divorced right now. And and I think it's important to remember that sometimes too. And I think Cap will not to put words in his mouth, but to some extent, like even though this was a budget, like so much uh, time and effort went into this movie, especially on your part, and it's really hard to control everything that happens in a movie.
Yeah.
And so you can imagine having such a huge team, how many things can go wrong sometimes. Yeah. And yeah, and I'm not trying to defend bad movies. There are some genuinely awful things out there, but yeah, there's always something to love. You just have to.
I definitely had that though, like getting behind the camera and trying to make a feature, because obviously, like I've made smaller things, and I did Spawn Year, and that was more of a behemoth than this overall. But like on a day-to-day basis, like you're making these like small individual things that will come together to make a grander thing, and this is shooting scenes that will all make like one story meant to be seen within a couple of hours, or in this case, it got quite a bit longer than that. I out of order, and I like trying to keep it all straight and shooting for a whole year and having people that don't know the script as well as I do, understandably not even remembering what time period we're in sometimes when we're shooting a scene. And I found myself appreciating some of the difficulty like of movie making with things that of course I have criticized, and I don't think it made me like lower my standards or anything. I just go, well, two things can be true at the same time. Like, I can still have the same issue I have with a thing and totally understand how it happened that way. Particularly, like, I'm talking about with filming, particularly in the editing bay. Like, I think I appreciate much more now how movies get cut all to crap and like end up compromised and being a shell of their former selves, because I have been tempted to go in with an axe and take out things that the movie probably needs that I probably shouldn't take out just for time, just because I'm afraid, not to keep harping on this, but just because I'm afraid that some people are gonna sit through my movie and get bored. And I could go back to, like, that opening review is 10 minutes long. I guess it's a rant more than it's a review, and there are bits of that I could axe, and the story would say the same, but like, I could go in and cut the line that you said resonated with you the most in the movie, and you wouldn't have that. And I, like, the movie could probably live without it, but it's maybe more important than I realize it is. So I'm sympathizing with just the difficulty of storytelling in this medium versus just writing short stories and books, which is what I'm used to doing. Like, it's a tough medium to tell a story in. You get your script, unless you're the MCU, you write your script and then you make your movie, and the movie doesn't. Like, you're still having to do like this other level of storytelling, where, like, the job's not done yet when you just write the script, and stuff can get lost in translation very easily. It's just a really tough way to tell a story.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. I fully agree with everything you said there. You're so right. And when I think even for you sending me this footage, you have to have a lot of trust in giving me your baby too. Yeah, you have no idea what I'm going to write. At least that first part, you had no idea what I was going to write. So, I thank you for giving me that opportunity and giving me free reign over everything, because yeah, I totally understand it, and hopefully, everything that I've done is not too self-indulgent on my part either. Hopefully it serves the story, and we'll let the audience decide that. But yeah, I think that it's not easy, because even when you're editing, I mean, I can't speak for every composer, but at least for me, that there are two things that the music I write most of all when scoring the picture. The first is the editing, is the pacing, is the speed. It has this speed that will dictate the speed of the music. And the second thing is just the character performances. Um, whether it was you or Doomspins or Brandon, sometimes you would just raise your eyebrow, or the camera would pan ever so slightly, or it would zoom in, and it was just enough to get ideas flowing through my head. So yeah, like, sure, yeah, it's low budget, but it doesn't mean that there aren't moments of brilliance. I think there are, or I wouldn't have been inspired to write anything. So yeah, but there are definitely long stretches of scene where I am thinking in your shoes and thinking, as an editor, like, oh, if I sent this to a composer, like, what would he do with it? Can he do anything with this? Should I just cut it out? And so I thank you for giving me a lot of breathing space sometimes to just let the music sit and not have sound effects competing with a melody I'm trying to place in. So
Sure.
yeah, again, thank you so much.
That's true, because we scored it before we had all the sound effects in, and that's
Yes.
definitely a thing you have to think about. So I should mention, the thing that gave me a lot of confidence in just throwing it at you like that was that Doomsvin suite that you gave me at the start that got this whole thing going, which is actually in the movie now, because Wendell sent me that kind of just as a sample of what you could do with that, and it sounded to me like a Michael Giacchino-esque, like, end of the movie over the credits kind of score. And I was like, I had kind of planned on using it the whole way through, and we ended up being able to time it out. I wasn't sure what exactly we would use for the credits, because I figured the credits would be long enough. It would need more than that. And indeed, it did, and it allowed me to use the rest of Aaron's chiptune melody because or chiptune music, because he wrote all of it. Like, he did the entire song, Backyard Super Kid, and we only use half of it in the walk around of the bunker because it gets interrupted. And I was
That's
like,
right.
he wrote all of this. I kind of want to use it somewhere. And so that allowed me to put both of those in there. But I thought that ended up just working perfectly as the last thing you're left with before you get to the after credits, which you also scored. And I wasn't really expecting that score to use any of the themes of the movie. I just asked you for like generic jazz stuff for a cooking show, and it turned into more score. And like, you actually scored it, which shocked me. Like, there are bits in it that you clearly did because of what is happening on screen. And real quick, that's a thing I wanted to thank you for, is you actually scored it, like in some cases almost into like a Warner Brothers cartoon kind of level, which was again a gift, because I would have been really happy with like music that fits the scene well enough but is like pretty broad and ambiguous, and like we're playing with these themes. Like I thought about having you start to write stuff even before you saw it, like any of the footage. I'm really glad I just gave you scenes, because like you scored it like a cartoon.
Yeah, you know what? I think because of Doom's Vincent and your wife, Doom Sarah's like just antics in that moment, it lends itself to that. And with the reviewer, I think the reason why I chose a more jazzy sound for that moment was because of the suit you wear. It's such a snazzy suit that there could only be one style of music. Maybe two. It would either be like two tone or ska, or it
Oh,
would be like
sure.
jazz. And so,
And somehow I
and
didn't
so
expect
that's
it. That was the that was the part of the score that actually most threw me off. And at first I wasn't sure about it. And Wendell will tell you, I never came back to him with any corrections. He would continuously say, like, now look, I'm not gonna be offended or upset if you want me to like take like add anything or like completely change whole sections. And I gotta admit, and I'm not saying this because I don't think it works and I just like lived with it or settled or whatever. I needed a couple of watches, but I was so thrown off by the kind of jazzy, in some ways like kind of the '60s Batman kind of score that we do in the reviewer section, and also it goes. I don't know if you've even seen this, but it sounds a lot like Amazon Tig.
No, I haven't actually. I've
Oh
seen
wow!
everything Tick except Amazon Tick.
Oh, you've got to
So
watch that.
that makes me want to see it now. Yeah, yeah. No, I've been saving that for a rainy day.
But I just wasn't expecting that, and I was afraid it was too bright at first, because that section is supposed to be dystopian, and it's supposed to feel like real rough and oppressive, and we get that when we get to the ninja fight. Like, it starts to sound much more what I thought that section was going to sound like overall. But then I went, no, I get what you're doing, though. You're getting in the reviewer's head. Not to analyze our own work too much, but I started to realize I can get away with this because this was Wendell's creative choice and not mine. So I'll analyze this part for a second. But it felt like you were getting into the reviewer's head and going, he's an optimist and he's trying to fix the world and he lives in this oppressive dystopia, but the score is sometimes what he's trying to turn the world into, in trying to bring comics back and be allowed to review them and make the world that would let the 12-year-old grow up to be the man he wants to be, that the 60-year-old told him he shouldn't be. And I was like, no, it works, but I needed a couple viewings before I got what was happening with that, because it just seemed too bright. And ultimately it was correct, but I didn't trust it for a minute. And Jason and I both looked at each other and we were like, I don't know about this.
No, I appreciate your trust in that. Yeah, I think there were many things going through my head in that moment. A big thing that I didn't tell you about, but was like on my soundtrack show, we were, I was like heavily doing research for the Incredible score, which I love, and I'm sure you do too, and
Oh,
so
there
many
you go.
people, and that kind of um, retro future sound. That's the look and the feel and the approach of what Brad Bird was doing with that movie. And because I was just so lost in research for that show at the time that I was scoring this, it wasn't just the suit. Yeah, it was that. But yeah, it's that optimistic approach. It's also, um, I mean, there is a cue in that soundtrack, in that score, that is the glory days. There is a moment in that movie where Mr. Incredible is sitting in his office, full of memorabilia of the good old days,
Yeah.
and him just reflecting on that, and that also inspired the scene when you go, pretend to be a math tutor, and go and see your younger self, and you enter the room, right, and the camera pans around the room, and I wanted that feeling of nostalgia there. That also came from the
That
Incredibles
didn't even occur to me.
because
It does sound like that. Yeah, and
I,
that's a
I think
brilliant score.
it's one of my favorite superhero scores. I think, yeah. I mean, there are so many good ones, but yeah, definitely one of my faves. And so yeah, I thought that yeah, jazz would really work, and also just entering that scene. It was the start of a new part, and every time it was a new part, like you've experimented, very well, I would say, with the color grading. I wanted to do that a little bit with the music too. I wanted each iteration of caps to have something different about them. But yeah, and also a lot of that is just I love jazz. Like, I mean,
Yeah,
that's the
me
truth.
too.
I love it, and not everyone will do this, but I'm a pianist. I grew up in jazz bands, and so I always start from writing, and occasionally I'll pick up the guitar, or an idea will come to my head, but I'll noodle at the piano first, and I'd spent so much time with that theme. That even just absent-mindedly, subconsciously, I would sit at the piano sometimes and just play a bit of jazz over it, and so that kind of worked its way into the score. And then because I added that in, that is ultimately what ended up uh, uh, appearing at the end too. There are little moments of jazz everywhere, not just with Doomsvince, but even the cooking part. There's like a bit of Dixieland jazz in there. There is
It's so good.
bossa nova. That's what the score ends on. I didn't think that would
No,
happen,
we
but
had to have hit some kind of record for like number of genres in a movie. I mean, like you hit everything except for bagpipes. You hit everything. But I gotta tell you, because I don't know if you know this. So you scored the reviewer section before I went to Sepia Tone, and if you'll recall, and I when we listened to the jazz score in that section, that's actually what inspired me to change the color grading in that section. That's why that's sepia tone
really.
now. Yeah, because it seemed right to go more kind of noirish with it. And so originally we have a different color palette for each time period, and it's admittedly like ridiculously color graded, like intentionally so. And
Yeah.
so the future is green because because that's Spawn year, and Spawn year made 60 crazy, and it also kind of reminds you of the Matrix, and I wanted to have that. So it's green, and then the 90s is blue. It's a warm, nostalgic color. And then the present day, but altered, Back to the Future to dystopian future, or dystopian present, pardon me, is was supposed to just be red. It's the color of hell. He's created a hell for the world while trying to get around his own personal hell. And so when I changed it to sepia tone, I kept the red. So if you go back and look at that, it's 75. It's actually not sepia tone. It looks sepia. What it really is 75% black and white. So if you look real close, there are colors that still pop in it. It is 75% black and white with a red color correction that just makes everything glow red. And
Wow,
I wouldn't have done
interesting.
that if it weren't for the score you did for that section.
That's really fascinating. I'm learning new things too. What else? No,
Well,
yeah. No, that's amazing.
and then what's really neat about it is with the version of the movie that we have now, you don't get to see the reviewer's suit in full color until the end when there is no color grading.
That's true.
And that was just kind
Yeah.
of a cool happy accident. I didn't plan that, but once we had that, that made me really double down on the sepia tone because I wasn't sure if, for sure if I wanted that. And then what I keep calling the sepia tone. And then the other thing we should mention, and maybe I talked about this in another feature somewhere, but because I wanted to ask you what this experience was like for you. I changed the ending. I rewrote it 2 weeks before we shot it, and it allowed us to go back to the reviewer because originally the movie does not end that way. He's not also a superhero, and it just one day it all clicked to me, and I was like, no, thematically this is better, and it lets us like book in the movie where you're the thing's called superhero rewind. You get to end with and it's supposed to be a superhero movie. It ends with superhero like that seemed better to me. And then like my wife was already memorizing dialogue, and I rewrote the scene on her. And then Wendell gets to write, more like grand superhero motif at the end. What was it like looking at that ending? Because I don't think we made this real clear earlier, but we workshopped the first draft of the script with the writing workshop, and so Wendell not only read it early, but also got to like give me critiques on it before we even knew we were going to work together, which is kind of interesting. And so you knew the original ending, and if memory serves, I think you asked me not to send it to you and you wanted to just watch it. I don't think you read it. I think you just watched it.
That's right. Yeah. Like my memory is terrible. If I ever need to be called on as a witness for something, I shouldn't be. It's terrible. But so yeah, I had read the script, but I kind of wanted to forget it because when I came into the score, I wanted to come in fresh. I wanted my first instincts, my musical instincts, to come from what I was seeing. So I
Yeah.
could serve the picture better. But no, I think the ending ultimately is much better, and certainly from a musical standpoint, like you said, it allows for that big ending. But that is all. It's all a build, from the moment that the reviewer first appears. Jazz works well there as well because he's snooping. Like there are elements where he's spying and exploring, and jazz lends itself well to that. But also I was, and I don't know how familiar you are with this, but have you ever watched the Avengers from the 60s? If you watched any of those old 60s
I never
shows,
have. I've always meant to.
okay, so when the reviewer gets in his car and the music lights up a little bit, um, I wanted to keep some, muted trumpets and jazz
Yeah.
going, but I wanted something a little more driving, and so that 60s theme from the Avengers show
Oh,
was a
that's what
big
that is.
influence on that. And of course, the Batman theme too. I mean, it's of the same time period. Those,
Yeah, of course. Well,
muted
and
guitars.
actually, there's a comic miniseries that crosses them. When we were doing '60s Batman about a decade ago now, they did several crossover miniseries with things from that time period, and they couldn't call it the Avengers because that would be confusing. So it's Stephen Peele, but I have those, which is kind of neat. But I didn't realize that's what it was. So you're saying like when the tires peel out, that's what that is.
Yeah.
That's
And
cool.
I mean, there is some not in the ending scene, but in the first scene with the Mustang. Yeah, like there is a decent amount of dialogue behind that. But yeah, so when it appears again with the car, and I put that. You didn't say anything, so I guess hope you liked it. I wanted it a little more driving, so I added this acid bass line in. And that came from there is this track from I want to say like 97, but around the late 90s, where a track called On Her Majesty's Secret Service by David Arnold, great composer David Arnold, and the Propellerheads. And it's such a driving a track, like such a cool pulse and beat to that I wanted to add that in too. So there are a lot of things influencing the music in there.
That's so
But
cool.
yeah, I love that old 60s sound. And because we're bouncing through the timelines, I felt like if I did anything more modern with the electric guitar, it wouldn't suit the piece. So yeah,
Well, it's neat that you
I
did so much
really
60s because, like, that's a period that's kind of near and dear to me. And, like, obviously with 60s Batman and Star Trek, and I love, like, Danger Diabolic and, a lot of stuff from that period, which is one of the greatest soundtracks of all time. And
yeah.
I don't know if you guys have covered that on your podcast, but you should, if you haven't, because it's amazing.
I
But
did not know
anyway,
that.
it's cool how much of a 60s vibe you managed to give us. I Even though we don't actually get to go to that time period. I've only got a few minutes before I have to get going.
Mm,
I have to go pick up my son. So I wanted to ask you a couple things.
sure.
What did you find to be like the hardest bit to crack? Where like maybe it's a scene that you had a lot of ideas for and you like weren't sure what to land on, or a scene where you just kind of blanked out, or even a place where you weren't sure if there should even be score. Because I didn't even give Wendell like a list of timestamps. This should be scored. This shouldn't. I let Wendell decide even what parts had music, with the exception of the review at the end, because obviously that's not going to have music. But
Yeah, it's a good question. Something that is coming to my mind now, I think, is the ninja scene. You made the mistake for my self-esteem of saying, "I can't wait to see what you do for this." I was like, "Oh no, what do I do?" Maybe it is time for bagpipes. No, but no,
it's the only big actual action scene that we choreographed that I got a professional to choreograph. It needed to be great. And it was. And by the way, I was going to list my top three, besides the thing I mentioned earlier with the 90s Batman score. I was going to list out for you my three favorite cues, and that's one of them.
oh sure, yeah.
It's so
No,
good.
no. Yeah, thank you for saying that. I appreciate it. That I felt the pressure on that one a little bit, but it wasn't because you said that. It was also because and this is a product of the way I compose. I think that I like to hit more hit points, I think, than other composers. Some people will have music going straight through a scene, but I've always loved Carl Stalling. And if you don't know Carl Stalling is the guy who wrote the music for the Looney Tunes and things like that. So you will have Wile E. Coyote and Roadrunner, running over a cliff. And then they fall, and then a piano lands on them, and the music mirrors that. In the soundtrack community, we call that like Mickey Mousing. Like the music is really like copying exactly what's on screen. So because of that, and it was so dramatic, and it was really well choreographed by your choreographer. I wanted to kind of mirror some of those hits by the ninjas in that scene. So the classic like bam, kapow. Like I wanted that mirrored in like the trumpets and some of the brass section, and hopefully that's not too over the top, and it still serves the scene really well. But
No, and I think it ends up complementing the sound
yeah.
effects real well once I got them in there, because you hadn't. I don't think you had heard what I did with that until yesterday. I
No, 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 no. I anticipated sometimes, but yeah, that took a long time, and I was having to be really uh, uh, really spend a lot of time, almost to the millisecond, making sure that the music was timed perfectly to those hits. And so
That sounds
naturally, there were
tough.
so many
It made
hits.
my job
I was
easier
like,
because I didn't do the sound effects until afterwards, and it made it easier to line those
right,
up. But I think it sounds
yeah.
great. Like those hits
Thank you for saying that.
with
I
what the score is
appreciate that.
doing. It's neat, and that was the most fun thing to edit. I because I got to go back to what I did with the Coke Redeemer fight in Spawn Year and just put in like really over the top like punches and kicks and like whooshes when you've got like the stick twirling and stuff. And I don't know, that stuff is fun, and really violent sounding stab sounds. I found like the most over
Yeah.
the top sounding. I found a lot of sounds of people like stabbing melons, and I
That
used
was
some
nice.
of that. And then I had to find like different levels of it, like of intensity, where it's like when the knife goes in his leg, that's got to be like real loud and like bother you, right? And then you need a different, smaller sound for the darts.
I wasn't even thinking about that. Yeah, it's a lot of work. Yeah, went into that.
But
I
that was all really
filming
fun.
the actors, and you included, did a great job with that too. Yeah, none of that was easy. I think for any of us. But yeah, there was so many things happening, and then when you finally pin the guy to the ground, it's a really dark moment for the reviewer, and I think around this time is when probably the school gets its darkest. It gets most horrific. I
Yeah,
didn't
that's
want
great.
to like lighten that. So yeah, I was trying my best to make that super dark and scary, and yeah, yeah, I think that, yeah, remembering it now, I think that was the moment, just because it took a lot of time. But yeah, honestly, even that, you get such a sense of satisfaction when you complete that. The next nervous part was just sending it to you, but you were always lovely and kind and very generous and polite, as always, with all of your feedback. So
Oh, thanks. I just
yeah,
loved all the really triumphant stuff during the ninja fight. Like when it gets like the brightest is when it's the coolest, and especially the contrast with that with the real broody stuff going through the house. Like I also loved that stuff.
yeah,
With
yeah,
the flashlight, that really elevated that, because that's such a
yeah.
typical kind of scene where I was like I was kind of worried that was going to be one of the more like fan filmy looking sections where it's just like a guy with a flashlight walking through a really dark house, and you made it seem kind of more X-Filesy, which really helped it. Um,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah. A lot of that came from there was some transition music that I wrote just
yes.
before that, and I achieved that all just through the bass guitar. I put my bass guitar into my pedal board, whacked a load of knobs, like a crazy musical alchemist, and out came these strange sounds. And because I had everything plugged in, I just kept going with that. Yeah, there's a fantastic company called Earthquake Devices that make these wonderful pedals, and also just some back shit crazy pedals as well. Yeah, I have some of them here that have this beautiful delay, which sounds really nice. But honestly, one of the key elements of this score is this pedal here, which is called the data corruptor.
Oh wow.
You plug your bass into, or any instrument into this, uh, and just pluck a note, and crazy things come out of it. And a lot of those sounds come specifically from that pedal. So we are not sponsored by Quaker Devices, but a big shout out to them for giving me something so unusual and kooky to work with.
Well, Wendell, I wish we had more time. I've got to get going. I was gonna say real quick. The other two of my favorite cues are the one I let in with, which is the that bass line in the start of the fourth part when I'm driving up to the house. To go talk to 88 just before the Doomsvins confrontation. That has been in my head like ever since you sent it to me, and it's the part that I've gone back and rewatched the most. I love that line. And then you mentioned the Lonely Man theme. Just after that, or maybe it's around the same part, but yeah, the walk up when 60 sits down to eat the Pop Tart, with the harpsichord stuff. I love that. Makes me so happy. It's great, and then just how insane it gets when you get to the theremin, and then the really just that whole section, the really epic bit after Vince has his one liner. When he says like it's 1999, and you get the bomb, 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 and then you think it's gonna cut to black, and he does the eyebrows before it goes to black.
Yes.
It's so good.
That's what I mean. Sometimes an eyebrow raise.
When I showed that to Vince, he was like, "I don't even remember doing that." Like, I don't know why he lingered on it. I don't know why he like laid that long, because we're just shooting that on green screen. We're just shooting lines, and he's always got that kind of follow through where he'll just do something really silly before I call cut, and it was wonderful.
An absolute joy. No, that made it so special, and yeah. But no, I honestly, before we end, yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity for this. Like, the honor is genuinely all mine. I really appreciate you giving me, just trusting me with everything, and I hope the audience get a kick out of it. I'm sure they will. Yeah, and also before we finish, for those folks listening to the audio of this and not watching the video, I just want to say that Cap has been naked and tap dancing this entire chat, and it's been highly distracting. So yeah, I sent him a Booster Gold costume to wear, but he just wasn't interested. So.
Screw Booster Gold. Yeah, I'd rather be buck-ass naked than have to wear a Booster Gold costume. I'd rather play bagpipes. Anyway.
Me too.
Everybody, thanks a lot for listening and watching. We sure appreciate it. Hope you enjoyed the movie, and I really hope I get to work with Wendell again down the line, because that was one of the great privileges of this project, was getting to do this with you, Wendell. And I hope we find excuses to work together and hang out more, and come on the channel and do a stream with me, because we haven't done that yet. And you would be wonderful. We'll find something to talk about.
Thank you so much. My pleasure. And I promise I will wear clothes.
Okay, I will too next time. I just figured the novelty of it.
I love it. I just love the idea of you finding someone who knows nothing about superheroes to score this movie and talk about it. It's amazing. Thank you.
Well, if I hadn't had you, there wouldn't have been so much X2, and that would have been a travesty.
Oh, that's true. That's true. What a score. What a theme. Yep.
Anyway, well, thanks a lot, everybody. We sure appreciate it. I was Captain Logan. This was Wendell Jones, and we'll see you later. Bye, everybody.